Welcome. Probably not expecting me. We're back. Politiocracy. It's probably the dumbest political podcast you'll ever tune into. I don't know what we're doing here. It's a podcast by idiots about idiots. So I just have a lot to talk about. I feel like this is nonsense that I should keep off of the other podcasts because we don't do political stuff there. That's not what we're here for. We're here for fart jokes and other nonsense. I let's just get into it. I was reading this story, and I'm a big suck. I'm a big baby for animals, and I kind of feel like I have a different opinion on a lot of the stuff that's going on in Canada right now. So, for weeks, the main news story that's been going on is the culling of the ostrich farm in BC. So, first off, I feel like before anybody heard about the story, we didn't even realize that we were eating ostriches, I guess. That just might be me. I might be ignorant that I didn't realize ostrich was a main source of meat for things, but or ostrich eggs. I didn't know there were so much demand for ostrich that we were farming them. That's just my ignorance. I'm sorry that I didn't know that. But when I read the story, I was outraged like everybody else, and I came to the conclusion that after the culling, which another term that I wasn't familiar with before this story, that's just me. I'm an idiot, and I should probably be more aware of things like this. But what happened here is the ostriches were sick. There were a large group of ostriches that came down with the bird flu, and they seemed to be getting better, and some of them had gotten rid of or had not contracted the bird flu from the rest of the herd. And the argument was that we don't need to kill the entire herd if a few of them are fine. And they're working on natural immunity, and that was a big topic in Canada for, I don't know, the past 5 years, I guess. Natural immunity is a no-no thing. So a large question has been brought up, and I did a little bit of research. The bare minimum, as we do here, is what can be transferred to humans. So the main topic of discussion was that the entire flock is going to get sick. This is going to spread into poultry. This is going to spread into a whole barrage of flus and viruses that can't be contained, and we need to stop it. We need to cut it off at the pass. So what happened is they murdered them all. They killed the entire flock. And when I looked it up, I found out that it can go to humans. You can transfer the bird flu into humans, and that seems to be a major bone of contention. And the big issue that I've found is when you see how this was treated after they killed the entire flock, the wrecking crew came in, and this is going to be a little bit of a graphic video. They brought in like a bulldozer and an excavator and lifted all the ostriches out by that. So you can see them picking up the ostriches. They scoop them out with an excavator, and they drag them out like that. So it seems odd, and the main topic of discussion from this video by Rebel News is probably the InfoWars of Canada. None of the people there were wearing masks, hazmat suits, even COVID masks, nothing. And that didn't seem to be the problem. So everybody's up in arms about that. That seems to be the major issue here, is that, if these birds were so sick and they all needed to be murdered, why aren't you protecting yourself from this deadly virus that's going around with them? The main problem with that argument is, and devil's advocate as I like to be, they weren't sick. That wasn't the problem. The problem was that they could get sick, and there's no way to tell if they will And the argument from the people that own the farm is that they've been working on herd immunity. So the people that got the ostriches that were over the virus, that had no traces of the bird flu in them, they were now working on, I don't know, vaccines. I'm not exactly sure, but they were working on a way of having these ostriches be bird flu free just through natural immunity. So some of them got sick, some of them didn't, some of them got over it, and some of them didn't. And the argument that they were trying to make is that if you just let them be, most of them would have survived and it would have been fine. The argument by the other side is that they could spread it and we're not aware. So we need to cut this off because this is a major issue. So I don't know where I land. I like to, you call me old fence sit Ryan because that's what I like to do here. The issue is that you probably do need to get rid of this herd if they are infected. You do need, it's a massive issue in the poultry community. So if like one chicken even comes down with a case of the sniffles, they burn that thing to the ground because it's unstoppable once it gets going. So that's kind of where we were at here. But one little factor that I would like to throw into that is that our great leader, Mark Carney, has vested interest in this. That's when you start looking into who has interest in natural immunity not being a thing, and that could be big healthcare companies, pharmaceutical companies. There's this company called Elanco Animal Health, and you look at who has stake in that. Mark Carney has a massive stake in that company. It's a U.S.-based company specializing in poultry vaccine, livestock vaccines, and companion animal vaccines like dogs, cats, rabbits, things like that. So this is the stuff that you get your dog, like distemper, those types of vaccines that you're regularly given to your animals if they even want to go into a vet. So that's something that made me interested in this. So I was looking at how much they make a year. It's billions. They're making like $4 billion a year. And that's insane. That's just through vaccinating livestock. And if there was some sort of breakthrough in livestock vaccines or livestock's natural immunity without vaccines, then that would be a huge detriment to a company that makes billions, not millions. People don't seem to understand what $1 billion is because your mind can't wrap around how big that is. Billions of dollars a year on vaccines. Just keeping up with, just making sure that you're not getting bird flu every single year, whatever disease is going through the farm. And that's interesting because when it went to the Supreme Court, this was fought for weeks over whether or not you should be allowed to kill these ostriches. And it's interesting because it was brought up and it seemed like it was going to be fought pretty severely, like they were going to go into the court and stand their ground saying that we shouldn't kill these ostriches. Look at what we're doing here. Here's the evidence to prove that we've been actually doing our due diligence and we found natural immunity is actually more beneficial than these vaccines. And it was immediately dropped by the Supreme Court. And conspiratorially, I would like to think that there was some pushing. There was a little bit of pushback on whether or not that should be even a case study to see if we were able to do that. So Canada's a hellhole. We've been falling apart for the last 10 to 15 years. And I don't see it getting any better anytime soon because I've been looking into a lot of the things. So speaking of the pharmaceutical industry, Canada has officially lost its measles elimination status. So for the last, I don't know, decade or so, Canada has 0 measles cases. There's been no measles in the entire country. So obviously, what has been being pushed here by most people is that all these anti-vaxxers, all these people who wouldn't take the COVID vaccine, all these people who are sending their kids to school without getting all the vaccines that you should are the problem. And those are the people. And to think that those people haven't existed for the last 10 years is insane. That's one of the craziest things that you could ever say. Do you really think there aren't any anti-government, anti-pharmaceutical, hippy-dippy people out there for the last 50 years? Those people have been around since I can remember. So to argue that we have lost our measles status because there's a new wave of people who refuse to get the measles vaccine. There's a lot of people that don't get the measles vaccine. Fun fact, I don't know if anybody knows this, if you're looking what has changed over the last few years and what could possibly be causing this uptick that nobody seems to want to talk about, is that if you look into who doesn't need to be vaccinated, who isn't part of this vaccination of infrastructure that we've built in here, that where everybody, if you want to be a part of society, you have to take part in our vaccine program. An interesting tidbit is that if you're an immigrant, a refugee, a newcomer to Canada, it is not required for you to get any sort of vaccine. You don't have to follow any sort of government guideline to vaccines. You can come right in, do whatever you were doing in your past country, and if you're not equating the measles uptick to people coming from a third world country and not needing to get any sort of vaccine, that's insane. That's one of the craziest things, that you're going to argue that the anti-government, anti-vaccine, anti-pharmaceutical people that have been here for decades and have been doing so for decades are the reason for the uptick in measles. That's crazy, because I'm telling you, those people have been around. But the people who haven't been around are the newcomers to Canada that aren't playing by the same rules. It's interesting to think that that's a question that you don't want to bring up. That's a thing that you don't want to look into, is whether or not people coming from third world countries living, as you would say, in places that are so war-torn, or they're persecuted in their country, or there's not enough supplies, that those people that haven't been vaccinated to live in our country, that haven't been following any of those rules, that haven't gotten any sort of vaccine, come here, and there's not any sort of influx because of those people. Now, that's crazy. If you want to be fair to everybody, then be fair to everybody. Point the finger at everybody, just not the people that you don't like because they're anti-government. All the people that don't like the government are always to blame, because that's who's putting out this information. You're like, it's time to wake up. It's time to start forcibly vaccinating people against measles. That's crazy. We need to seriously take a look at the way that our immigration system works. And if you're forcing people to get an experimental COVID vaccine to work at their job, to participate in society, but the people that you're welcoming into your house, into the entire country, are not eligible to follow those, or they're not required to follow those rules. That's crazy. I don't understand how we can live this way. And that's why I think that you can't really trust what the government says. It's a hot take, I know. But you need to really look into things for yourself. You need to start thinking, well, if the measles uptick is happening coinciding with the uptick in immigration, is there any correlation there? There doesn't necessarily need to be, but if you're not looking into any of that, then what are we even doing? You're just going to automatically assume. I see all of the comments of the people going, oh, well, the measles uptick, oh, you know that it's that guy. It's those fucking racist, fascist people that were hanging Canadian flags upside down and saying that we can't trust the government. It turns out you can't trust the government because they'll create a problem and then solve it by way of making a shit ton of money, but through the pharmaceutical companies. It's insane. I don't know how we can live like this. I don't know how anybody can believe that the government is looking out for your best interest when they do things like this. It seems like the same people that brought you the vaccine for the animals that obviously have vested interest in these people not finding some sort of herd immunity in the livestock are the same people that are going to cause a measles outbreak by bringing in people that are not required to have the measles vaccine. So if most, let's say even half of the people that are immigrating to Canada aren't taking the measles vaccine, and then there was 1% of the Canadian population that was those people that they were homeschooled and they stayed away from the education system. They didn't go to a doctor their entire life. They didn't get any sort of vaccine towards this. Which one do you think is affecting this more? Because I think those people have been around for a long time. The people who just avoided, who lived in the forest and just never fucking came out, they might have the measles, but we're not aware of that. And that's why the uptick is happening. That's the major reason why things are different, and we don't understand. We're blind to why it's happening. That's crazy. We're never going to find out why, but that's where we're at. So there's a lot of things to talk about. I want to get into the new Trump email that came out. I want to read that and go over that. But while we're on the topic of immigration, I have this news article about that's been going around that, again, I feel like I have a different take. So this man right here, I've not a chance I'll be able to pronounce his name. This is insane. Manoj Govindbalanikam. Sure, that's what I'm gonna go with. I read this guy's story, and now everybody's going off of this exact same on the opposite end of the political spectrum. People are going through this saying this immigrant came to Canada and he abducted a child and he's trying to stay in Canada. Now, well, most of that is true. I'm going to go through the entirety of the story. So, as far as I understand it, this 37-year-old man from Brampton, not surprising where he's from, he approached a 9-year-old who was fishing alone at a river somewhere. And he went up to him, gave him a Remax business card, like he was going to offer him to sell his house. I don't exactly know. It was just like, hey, are you in the market for one of these homes in Brampton? Very confusing. Gave him a fidget spinner and gave him a ride in his Camaro. So he said, hey, I know what kids love. Real estate and Camaros, and he's honestly not wrong, because that's all it would have took for me is some sort of toy and a ride in a Camaro. So Indian man approaches a 9-year-old who's alone at the river. He brought him for ice cream, drove him around for the afternoon, took some photos with him of the landscape, and then returned him, and his father found him a little while later. Now, I love victim blaming. It's one of my favorite things to do. What the fuck is a 9-year-old doing alone fishing? I can't even... A 9-year-old is an infant to me. A 9-year-old, I get it. We probably grew up in a time where 9-year-olds were running free and fishing by the river, but we don't live in Leave It to Beaver times anymore. I think it's insane to have your 9-year-old fishing by himself at the river. That's crazy. Now, second off, I don't know when we stopped teaching kids to not go with strangers, because fun fact about me, my mom was obsessed with me being abducted. I was such an abductable child. I still am borderline retarded. And what she would do when I would leave the house is she would grab me by the wrist and she would say, how do you get out of this? And I would go, you turn towards the thumb and then you run the other way. So if somebody grabs you by the wrist, you run away. So I don't know if he gave me a real estate business card and a fidget spinner if I would be able to continue fighting, because god damn it, this guy's got a Camaro and he works in real estate. I might have to get into this car. He says he's gonna take me for ice cream. Mom, what the fuck am I supposed to do? So he goes for ice cream, drives around, drops him back off. He was unharmed. Dad found him. That's the end of the story, basically. So obviously, the parents freaked out. They called the police. The police investigated. The police arrested this guy, and he was charged with abducting a person under 14. It was bizarre. It was strange. I don't understand how this happened, but the main issue is that he is not a citizen. He's a permanent resident. He is, as 90% of the Brampton population is, a permanent resident, not a citizen. And if he goes to jail for 6 months or more, he's immediately deported. And as you should be, honestly, that's a good ruling in Canada. There's very few of those in Canada, but that's a good ruling. Is that if you're a non-citizen and you're convicted of a crime that sentences you to 6 months or more, you get deported. Now, the defending attorney is obviously going for, he says, well, we'll give him some jail time, but we're going to give him 3 years of probation. Can't be around any fishing children. We're going to take his Camaro away. He's not even allowed to own a fidget spinner. But we're going to give him 6 months minus a day, minus 1 day, and which we'll just leave it at that. How about that, Judge? Like, we don't all see through that immediately, saying like, well, obviously that's just to avoid deportation. We don't want to send him back to where he came from because that would be inhumane. There's barely any, like, what, we're going to go back to India? Those children, they know better. They're not going to be fishing. What are they going to do? Scoop some garbage out of the river? So it's crazy. It's an insane way to be. So everybody seems to have this same stance where it's like, well, fucking deport him. Get him out of here. Why the fuck would he be here? Let's not just ban him from parks and the fishing spots, and he's not allowed to talk to a kid under 16 and keep him around. Why not just deport him? He abducted a child, and I do agree. That's probably the best sentence. But we should also be looking into the fact that a 9-year-old boy was left alone in Brampton. It's gotta be the worst parenting decision that you've ever done, is to let your kid go fishing by himself as a 9-year-old, and he doesn't know to not get into a Camaro with a creepy old man. That's insane. So I don't know how to feel about that. I agree that he should probably be deported. I don't agree with 6 months. If the charge is that he should get 6 months or more, then he should get 6 months more. I don't like this minus a day thing just to skirt the rules. It's like, okay, we get it. He did wrong. We'll give him 3 years of probation. He won't even be able to talk to any of these beautiful, supple Brampton boys that he's obviously going after. And we'll just give him minus a day, 6 months in jail, and then 3 years probation. That's insane. If there shouldn't be any characterization or any caveat to what the crime is, it'd be like, oh, well, deportation should be on the table if the crime fits it. And I think abducting a child is pretty high on the scale for deportation. Like, you know, it's like, well, he just took him for ice cream and drove him around. He wanted to ride my sweet Camaro. He had a yellow Camaro. Like, you don't want to drive in fucking Bumblebee from the Transformers? Well, that's obviously the every child's dream. He's like, at any moment this thing could transform. So I don't know. I feel weird about it. I disagree with the statement that we're trying to keep him in the country by giving him minus a day, just under the sentencing. But also, we should probably look into the parents, why they're letting their 9-year-old kid run around the town alone. That should be, like, to me, the difference between letting a 9-year-old and a 3-year-old run around is so slim. It's so, like, I wasn't allowed to walk home from the bus until I was like 11. But probably like my parents wouldn't let me go out alone. Like I could hang out with my friends by myself, probably younger than that. But after school, broad daylight, like 3 o'clock in the afternoon, I wasn't allowed to walk home by myself until I was almost a teenager, and that was in the early 2000s. To let your 9-year-old go fishing by himself seems crazy. That's the thing I love to do is victim blame. Now this kid was asking for it. Anyway, Canada falling apart. Piece by piece, immigration, killing all our birds, letting Indians take our kids. They're taking our jobs and our kids. That's exactly what's happening. And now, because nobody can afford to do anything, rather than maybe cut taxes, maybe offer livable wages, enforce rulings that say you can't have 13 part-time jobs at your establishment. You got to give somebody full-time. There's lots of ways that you combat livable income problems where you have 70-year-olds working at Winners because they can't afford to live, and their pension has basically dwindled away to nothing. What I think we should do is cut taxes, because if the taxes aren't there to spend on nonsense, then we will decide very quickly what to do. I figured out this plan a long time ago. The government needs to be audited, not like Doge in the States, not like it's not as simple as just getting an autistic man with a chainsaw to go in there and go like, well, we're spending too much on transgender surgeries in Zimbabwe. No, obviously we shouldn't be spending that. What you can do is, we are a democracy, but we're not a full democracy. This isn't majority rules by any means necessary in Canada, in America, in most of the Western world. What we can do is vote for elected officials, and those elected officials give us a audit of the government, exactly what we're going to spend on. So it's like, this is how much is going towards police, this is how much is going towards roads, this is fire, this is like basic infrastructure things. This is completely simple. Yes, we are a constitutional monarchy. That's exactly what we are. So technically, we're still owned. We have a king. Technically, there's some sort of higher power than even the government that is elected here. But at its core, the government needs to be liable for what they're spending, and we need to decide what we're spending. I don't think the way that our government should work is that we vote for somebody and they just get in perpetuity to decide what happens with the tax dollars. That's not how it should work. We should vote somebody in, and those people give us a proposal. At tax time, they should send you a bill. I've suggested this many times before. So there's going to be mandatory things, similar to when if you went to a Western high school. The way that things kind of work here is that you go and there are mandatory classes: math, science, fucking art. There's just mandatory things that you have to do. And then there are extracurricular but you still have to pick some of them, but you have to, they're not mandatory. You get to choose them. And those are the transgender dance studies and underwater basket weaving. Those are the things that you can just decide to do them. We're just filling time, really. That's kind of what it's for. So the government at tax time sends you a bill, and it's going to be, okay, 10% is going towards hospitals, 10% is going towards police, and then you're going through, and that's what you have to pay. And if you can afford to pay more, there's going to be another box below it, and those are for sending money to Ukraine, bombing brown kids in Palestine, anything that you want. Basically, there could be lots of wars in Syria. You can decide down there all of those things that you want to pay extra for. you can. If you want to pay for government subsidies, SNAP benefits, anything like that, you can decide to pay more. You don't have to pay more for social services, but you can if you want to seem like a good person. And the caveat to all of this, the kicker to all of this, is that it's public. There's going to be a public registry for mine. You can look it up. You could type in Ryan King to the government registry and see what I paid for. Be like, did he pay for the bare minimum, or did he click no on starving children and things like that? Because that's going to be very, very telling to the people who make a lot of money. Now, if it was me and you looked it up, I'm probably going to pay the bare minimum because I'm poor, because I can't afford to pay for anything else, because there's nothing left. I'm going to pay my taxes and I'm already going to be broke after it. So I'm going to pay for the roads and the fire and all the things that we need, and the military or whatever. All of those things, I'm going to have no money left. But when you look at the Bill Gates and the Elon Musks of the world, if they clicked nothing else, if they checked none of those boxes for social services and safety nets for people that need it, that's going to look really, really bad for them. You're going to look into all these people. If Donald Trump said no to all of those things, then that's going to really hinder his campaign. That's going to look really bad for him, because all of this is public. There should be public information on what we're paying for and who is paying for it. I don't care. And the way that it works is there should be a threshold. So if we don't meet the threshold for these things for social services, then they're obviously not something that we want. We vote with our dollars. It's very simple. So if I want to have transgender surgeries for minors, and we meet the $100 million threshold that you need to supplement transgender surgeries, then if it's not met, then we don't need it. That service is cut, and that money can go somewhere else. It's either refunded to the people that paid for it, or it can be displaced somewhere else. You can have multiple checkboxes. Be like, if this not met, where do you want it to go here? Or do you want it to be refunded? That's very simple. It's not that complicated, but for a government, that might be the hardest thing possible, because they already just make you decide to pay another person to decipher how much money I owe the government. It's an insane way to be. But that leads me to this. This week, the government of Canada has proposed Bill S-206, which is the development of a national framework for guaranteed livable basic income. What I like to call communism. That was very loud. Jesus Christ. That was our economy collapsing. So what that means is that it's universal basic income, whatever you want to call it. It's communism. So it's basically the idea that anybody under a certain amount of money is going to just get money every month. They're going to get a certain amount of money that guarantees that they make enough to live. Now, on the surface level, that seems like a great thing. That seems like, oh my God, we're all going to make a bunch of money. But what that does, first off, crazy amount of inflation. If we're just printing money to give to anybody, to give back to the government, because the money that you're going to then spend is going to be taxed. The money they give you will be taxed. And then when you spend it, it will be taxed. And it'll go back, but kind of dwindle. And we're just going to have to print an insane amount of money to give to people that need money, which doesn't make any sense. This is one of those things that you could vote for with your dollars in my system that I've created. So what it says here is cash transfer sufficient to live on are available to those in need has been long advocated in Canada. I don't know who's been advocating for that. Maybe the National Inquiry into Missing Murdered Indigenous Women and Children, women and girls. I didn't know they were a big lobbying group in Canada, but apparently so. They've been lobbying, saying we need universal basic income or livable income, because when you say basic income, it just makes it seem like you're going to get a check for like $35 each month, and it'll be like, there you go, get a tank of gas. So what this is supposed to do is supposed to give everybody enough money to live. But all that will do is push up what that line is. If the line is $50,000 a year, that's the basic amount of money. So now everybody gets $50,000 a year. Everything just goes up. Like all of these services that are required to live, bread will be $15. This is an insane way to be. This is going to cause, at minimum, by research, financial research institutes have looked into this and said, by minimum, this is going to cause 30% inflation. So your dollar is going to be worth 30% less, which is already crazy. The Canadian dollar is already worth 30% less of the American dollar. So if we drop it even more, we're going to be looking at we're 40% of the American dollar. So I don't know who is suggesting this. This is just a study to see if this is feasible, which I really, really hope that they look into this and say that's the case. Like, we're going to lose money doing this. Everybody's money is going to be worth less. But the main argument for this is that every single year Canada spends about $10 billion on trying to support impoverished people. And if we just took that $10 billion and divvied it out to the people that need it, that would solve this problem. I don't see it like that, because if we look down, if you just look a little bit south into America, and you see when the government disagrees on whether we should bomb Israel or bomb Palestine, and they shut down the government, your money dries up. When your income is determined by the government, it never goes well. That's just communism. That's exactly what happens, and it never goes well when the fact that the same people that will go, if you go to get your driver's license done, it's hell on earth because the people are so incompetent, or you go to any sort of government agency, they're the worst. If you look at the VA in America, it is probably the worst run place in society. It's awful. If you go to a hospital in Canada, you're a 9-month wait in the emergency room. It's insane the way that we choose to live. Now, everything is run poorly, yet we choose to let the government decide how much money we get every month. It's all this will do will increase the amount of inflation. It will reduce the amount of I don't know how to describe it, but it's basically going to make us lazy. That's the only thing that's going to do, is that you're going to think, oh, I'll get to work on my creative endeavors. I'll get to do a shitty political podcast for people. Whoop-de-fucking do. You shouldn't incentivize people doing nothing. That's the worst way to be. It's communism with extra laziness. Like, we're not only going to say that you get money for free, you don't have to do anything for it. Usually in communism, it's like, if you do your part, if you're a cog in the wheel, then we'll give you enough to live. That's better than what we're suggesting here. What we're suggesting here is that you get money and you do nothing. We're literally to the point where you're going to own nothing and be happy about it. You're going to, the conspiracy theories were right. We're all going to live in a 4x4 Chinese pod, just squished in there with our VR helmets on so we can watch reality TV, and money's wired into your account depending on how good of a citizen you were this month. So you're going to get guaranteed X amount of dollars. If you want a little bit more, then maybe be a little more pro-government. Maybe vote correctly. Maybe do that. It's disgusting. I don't know who is doing this, but I understand that the issue of poverty is a big issue. I'm living it. I am so unbelievably poor and so unbelievably in debt. I don't see the government giving free money to people who don't work or can't work is going to help. Because all that's going to do is, so say I make $51,000 and I don't qualify for the basic income bill. What's stopping me from just making $49,000? You're incentivized to work less. That's crazy. That's an insane way to be. I don't know how to make this make sense. I wish that that I could understand it. Maybe somebody smarter than me can take it, because this is a podcast by idiots for idiots about idiots, because it seems like that's where we're headed. So, finally, the meat and potatoes. This is exactly the most important thing that's come out today. Bombshell. Newly released emails show Epstein told Ghislaine Maxwell that Donald Trump, quote, spent hours in my house and knew about the girls. So I have the email here. What it says here, this is an email from G Vacations, which is apparently this is from Ghislaine Maxwell to G Vacations, which is apparently Epstein's email. He says, or she says, I want you to realize that the dog hasn't barked yet. The dog that hasn't barked yet is Trump. The victim spent hours in my house with him. He never once was mentioned. So he was saying this was right. This was well before. This was in 2011. The next email was right before the election, saying that we need to, if we bring this to light, he probably won't win the election in 2016. That seems concerning. So everybody on both sides is just digging their feet in to either this proves it, Donald Trump is a pedophile, he molested kids, and he knew everything that Jeffrey Epstein was doing. And the other side is going, no, this is just saying he spent hours in the house and he didn't really know. He didn't do anything. He just might have known. At the very least, what this is showing is that he probably knew that Epstein was doing something shady. That's what it seemed like. It seems at the very least he knew that something was off about the girls, and he was, to what degree, aware of it, I don't really know, because it's not very clear in these emails, but he seemed to know that something was going on. What it says here, this is a email from Jeffrey Epstein to Michael Wolff, who is a Hollywood reporter who was doing interviews during the 2016 election. It says, victim, Mar-a-Lago, then something that's redacted. Trump said he asked me to resign. Never a member ever. Of course he knew about the girls. He asked Ghislaine to stop. So, what this sounds like to me is that he knew something was going on, whether or not that was before or after he was running for office. We don't really know, because this email was dated January 31st, 2019. So while he was in office running for a re-election, he knew something was going on, and he was asking them to stop. Please stop that. So very interesting how he seemed to be aware of this. So at the very least, it seems like he found out what was going on, but he didn't want to come out about this, because obviously there's massive ties to Donald Trump and the Epstein establishment. I don't know what it was exactly, the financial group that Epstein was a part of. And he didn't want any of this stuff to come out during his election, during his term as president, during wherever this was. Because the next email that he has is this seems to be from Michael Wolff to Jeffrey Epstein. It seems to be about, all of this seems to be very taken out of context and very confusing, because we're not given everything here. This is the third email that says, I think you should let him hang himself. If he says he hasn't been on the plane or to the house, that gives you a valuable PR and political currency, which makes it seem that he had been to the house and he has been on the plane, which I think has been all but confirmed at this point. You can hang him in the way that potentially generates a positive benefit for you. Or if it really looks like he could win, you could save him and generate a debt. Because this email is dated 2015. This was probably about a year before the election in December of 2015. So he's already started his campaign, and he was running for office. It seemed like it was I think at this point he probably would have been winning the or on his way to winning the Republican nomination. So that's interesting, because what they're saying here is that Epstein knows that Trump knows more than he's letting on, and that he's done more than he's letting on. And Michael Wolff here is saying you could use this as a positive towards you. You could use this to generate some sort of debt to the most powerful man in the world. That's very interesting. So, of course, it is possible that when asked, he'll say Jeffrey was a great guy. He's gotten a raw deal as a victim of political correctness, which is to be outlawed in the Trump regime. So that's interesting, because I think that's kind of what happened. That is similar to what came out during the election. He was saying, I don't know exactly what was going on. This seems to be, he's railroaded. This was prior to Epstein being convicted of anything. This seems like I think he'd been convicted before, but I mean of the one that made him go to jail, and he was he took his own life, I believe is what happened, is the official story. So now this is from Jeffrey Epstein back to Michael Wolff. So if we were able to craft him an answer, what do you think it should be? I hear CNN is planning to ask Trump tonight about his relationship with you, either on air or in a scrum afterwards. So, and I believe that is what happened, because things, it hadn't come to light exactly how bad Jeffrey Epstein was at this moment. So it's interesting to see what comes of this. Trump has made a statement on Truth Social. He said that this is all a scam by the Democrats to try and deflect away from the government shutdown that's going on, that has just been, I think, as of right now, officially overturned, and they will be going back to work now. So they're trying to deflect away from the nonsense that's been going on, that they've just given up on whatever ground they were trying to hold, in saying that they were right when clearly they were wrong, and they were holding out for things that were just unrealistic and costing the American people a lot of money. So none of that really makes sense. This is very convenient for this to come out at this exact moment. Who has been holding on to these emails, similar to, like, if Trump knew beforehand, why didn't he say anything? If you had these emails, why did they not come out before? Why does everything seem to happen to kind of make us turn our heads away from what's going on? When something shady goes on with the government, we all have to point to the sky and look for aliens, or an email comes out about something. It seems like this Jeffrey Epstein thing is never going to go away, because it's a beautiful thing to slow drip out information whenever something happens. When the budget isn't balanced, when the government shuts down, when some sort of political scandal, when Nancy Pelosi makes another $14 billion on the stock market, it's like, all right, well, let's release another redacted email that kind of doesn't really make a lot of sense. I don't understand the exact meaning of most of this stuff. I've read through all of the emails. Nothing really says anything. Now, the statement from Donald Trump on Truth Social says, in other words, the Democrats are using Jeffrey Epstein hoax to try and deflect from their own massive failures. In particular, the most recent one, the shutdown, which seems to be the par for the course. Why we've never actually defended any of this, why you've never gone against this, why you've not just been like, what are these emails about? What did you know? What exactly did you know? Let's just be open about this. And the reason you won't be open about this is because something's going on. Every side has been corrupted. That's why we need to be more open. We need to be transparent. And that's a terrible word because every political person tries to say that. We just need to be open and honest, and we need to shine light on literally everything. That's why these censorship and free speech attacks by the Canadian government at the current moment are ridiculous. We need to have the most open and free dialogue possible. I don't care if your entire dialogue is just screaming the N-word. That should be, then we go, well, guess we're not talking to that guy anymore. That guy's not making great points. Or you might go, that guy's making some great points. But the point being that we need the most open and honest government possible. We need to see every single thing that's being spent. We need to know where every dollar's going, because the government generates so much money that we should be able to figure all of this out. We should not be spending money in a lot of places that we are, and we should be spending money where we're not. I think one of the main things that we should do is stand up before every meeting and list how many starving kids are in our country. If we haven't solved that, then no money goes anywhere else. The money stays inside the government until the entire budget is balanced, until we're not in debt to... I don't fully understand who we're in debt to. We've created debt to what? Somebody needs to explain that to me, because I'm an idiot, and I think most of us are too. I think everybody else, including the government, including the people running the ship, it is the blind leading the blind. We have created debt out of nowhere, and we're never paying it back because we can't stop spending. And if we stop spending just for like a year, we could figure out this. We could figure out where the money is going and why it's disappearing so fast. So let's do it. Let's just try it. Let's just try to, like, I get it. There's going to be a couple of things that we cut and we go, hold on, we need to bring that back, because that's going to be the few eggs that we crack to make an omelet. Because without realizing the severity of what we cut and what we lose, we're not going to figure out what we need. Because when you don't figure out what you need by just keeping things forever and just saying, no, I absolutely need that. You have to kind of get rid of it. You don't know what you got until it's gone. So you get rid of that. Some of the people that have lost their food stamps and SNAP benefits have realized that they didn't actually need them. And I think they knew that for a long time. I think a lot of the people did know that. But it's very hard to take away free stuff once you've given it to them. So similar to the basic income that they're trying to give to people, once you give it to somebody, it's next to impossible to take it away from them, because they'll now rely on that. So you need to figure out exactly what we need. We need to cut so much of this spending until we figure out where our money is going and why we can't pay any of it back. And we need to cut every single dumb thing that we're spending money on. No new wars, no intervention into other people's problems. I get it that the argument is that we need to intervene in other countries because we want them to be our friends, and if we're seen as a benefit to them, then they're going to be less resistant to the things that we want done. We can't get until you can get your own house in order, you can't do that. If I was so poor that I couldn't eat, you wouldn't be upset that I didn't give you a Christmas gift. That would be crazy. You'd be like, oh my God, he's dying in there. Like he's living on the street. You don't get upset that the homeless man didn't give you a Christmas gift. So we're poor. Our entire country is poor. Our dollar's doing shit. Our economy is been on the decline for a long time, and it doesn't seem to be getting better. So until we can get that solved, and until we can figure out how to sort our own problems out, let's stop trying to fix other people's. We don't need to influence. We don't need to create regime chains in Yemen. We don't. That's insane. I don't understand how this isn't so very simple. When you're in control of the government, it's obviously very difficult to say we need less government. But that's what we need. We need somebody who's going to stand on that. And Trump, the reason that Trump won was because he said things like that, is because he's going to drain the swamp and he's going to do that. But then he turned into the exact thing that we didn't want. Trump turned into the neoconservative that everybody hated before it. He's basically Dick Cheney at this point, where he's created a war. He basically started a war in Iran without any approval. That's straight out of George Bush's books. I don't know how we let this happen, how this isn't a thing. The entire Trump regime is crumbling, and all that's doing is setting us up for a swing in the exact opposite direction. How do you think you get a Mundambi? Wow, Jesus Christ. How do you think you get a Muslim terrorist communist in New York? It's because we overcorrect every single time. When you go so far right, you eventually go full circle and you end up so far left. We're never going to find a centrist person that wants a smaller government and less spending and no outside wars and intervention. You just need a non-interventionist in the government. And that never seems to be the case, because we're all worried about, it's like you need to make friends at the table. When you go to these G7 summits and you want to be the person that everybody wants to be friends with, you want to sit at the cool kids table. So what you have to do is you have to fund Israel, and you need to fund wars in the Middle East, and you need to try to create regimes all around the world that'll be favorable to you. No, that's not what you need to do. America, and for the most part Canada, have the benefit of being isolated from most of the world. They have for somebody to invade the North Americas is next to impossible. It's so very difficult for somebody to come over here and fight a war over here against us. So that gives us the benefit of being a giant Switzerland. You could go and you could decide all the things for yourself, create a perfect utopia over here of perfectly balanced budgets and a perfect economy, and then eventually you could give everybody free money because we've generated so much income and we haven't spent anything. If we cut all of this spending and created the society that everybody wants, and we're not trying to help the world, you could let anybody in that you want. We could give free homes to the homeless. There's so much that you could do to fix the society that you actually live in if we weren't trying to fix other people's societies. It's very simple. All you have to do is figure out what the people want. And the only way to figure out what the people want is exactly how I said to do it. I would love for a person smarter than me to tell me why this system won't work. We spend on what we decide. You vote for the person who gets to decide. What I run on is that the main things that your tax dollars are going to go to are roads and police and fire and hospitals, and like you could have public health care and things like that. All of that is going to be your tax bill. And that's though each side can have their own mandatory tax bill, and those are what you're voting for. You vote for that, they get in. And then the ancillary secondary things that people all go for, and you can decide on how much you want to pay. It's just like charity. It's taxation without the theft. We all agree that society needs these things to function. You will be paying for that indefinitely. That's where your tax dollars are going. They're not going anywhere else. The government can't just decide to send $40 billion to Ukraine. That's not something that we voted for. We didn't pay for that. It's not in the budget. So this much amount is going to all our public services, and this much is going towards paying down our debt, and this much is voluntary. This is our slush fund that the richest people and the people that are making over a certain line are starting to pay. You could even have it to, instead of having tax brackets where they're paying more, you could have more things added to the list for the richest of people. So the people that are making over $1 million a year, it's like, hey, you have to pay for the homeless shelters. That's one of your extra tax burdens that you have to eat. And that would be perfect. That is the perfect libertarian build your own road society that we're going for, where the government agencies aren't exactly there. Like, we can still have the food inspection agencies that come and cull all of our animals. That can still be a mandatory service, but the mandatory services aren't going to be bombing brown kids in the Middle East. I can guarantee when you put that on a tax form and you get to decide if you pay for that, I can guarantee that 99% of the population isn't going to want to pay for that. So I don't know how we can just look at our government and say, you guys continue to bomb brown kids in the Middle East with our money, and then we vote for you anyway. That's a wild way to be. So that's my take. I apologize. This will happen more. I'm planning on continuing this. I was asked by a couple of the people in the comment sections of the Politiocracy YouTube page to continue doing this. Apparently, my hot takes are just the hottest on the internet. I would love to get in a debate with somebody about this. I don't know. I'm probably going to bring a few people on, maybe work my way into a co-host for this thing, but I think I'm back. I think we're here. Politiocracy, it's here to stay. I think I'm just going to keep all of my hot political takes away from all of the other podcasts on the network. And if you care about any of this stuff and you have anything that you want me to talk about and give the sweetest of beautiful takes and really just solve the world's problems every single week, send me articles, send me stuff to talk about. I will continue. So go subscribe over there. Subscribe to the website. We will be doing this more. I think Wednesdays, roughly around 11 o'clock. That's when we're going to do this. So I appreciate it. Hopefully no more ostriches get killed. No more 9-year-olds get abducted in the next week. And we'll keep the communism off the table for one more week. Probably next week I'm going to dive deeper into the hate speech laws that'll probably put me in jail before this thing actually takes off. But if any more news articles come up and you care about them, send them my way, and I will bring them up next week on Politiocracy.